Fun fact, Hungrybox has never lost a set to a Peach player. Until lloD. Ludwig Ogren's tournament, the LACS2, brought in a quite frankly massive prize pool alongside a lot of highly ranked players. This included Zane and Mango, who took first and second place respectively, as well as HBox, IBDW, Plup, Axe, and even the gauntlet of Captain Falcon, Wizrobe, S2J, and None. With all of these top names in attendance, I don't think anyone expected lloD to be the player to shock and surprise everyone watching with a 3-1 set victory over 2019's global rank 1 player, Hungrybox. So for those of you who were able to see the tournament live, you were able to bear witness to literal Melee history. Okay, I guess technically that may not be entirely true, since DOH said HBox lost to a player named Zelik around 2009, but come on, that was a good intro. Some people may call lloD a quote-unquote hidden boss just because of his busy schedule, but the dude is by no means hidden. Obviously, the current events in the world had prevented basically everyone from competing in live events, including these show up every so often and place remarkably well type players like lloD, but Melee took a turn for the better on June 22nd, 2020, where Fizzy made the announcement that the team behind Project Slippy had managed to somehow introduce rollback netcode into Super Smash Bros. Melee. As quickly as I can TLDR rollback, it's quite possibly one of the greatest things to come from the Melee scene. And it's brought about a surge in not only practical, but successful online events that need not worry about latency issues, region locks, and the obstacles that might have slowed down online tournaments earlier in the year. A convenient byproduct of little to no latency netplay was that it allowed a lot of players to hop into games much more easily, so as a result, we're able to have players like lloD, who's usually wrapped up in med school, come back for easily accessible events like the LACS. lloD famously took a game off of Hungrybox's Puff at Shine 2019, becoming the first Peach player to ever do so. And that's pretty insane when you think about it, because Armada, literally one of the greatest players of all time, who also happens to be a Peach main, felt compelled to try out a Young Link counterpick to HBox's Puff. And rather than playing the matchup out, Armada continued to default to the low-tier character for 4 years after that. So you can probably imagine how completely and utterly wild it is to say that for the first time in Melee's history, a Peach player has beaten Hungrybox's Jigglypuff in a best-of-5 set, and on his birthday to boot. Triff, the current highest ranked Peach player at global rank 16, says the matchup is 80-20 in favor of Puff, and Armada, who's pretty important based on that earlier description, labels it as give up.
Sweet!
lloD doesn't think the matchup is exactly Peach favored, but he has it as a bit more manageable than some other Peach players.
It's entirely Puff's decision on how fast the pace is going to go.
Typically, the Puff player wants to be a bit more methodical in approaches, weaving into and out of threat ranges in order to find openings, which can often result in entire stocks. In this matchup though, Puff can go full box out mode to punish the Peach's slow horizontal movement speed. Peach's game plan revolves around interaction with Puff's back air. This can look like different types of aerial drift following the back air, or just straight up intercepting the startup of the move, but she has no real way of directly challenging it. Part of the reason why Peach struggles so much versus Puff is because the Puff player is able to completely dictate the pace of the match at almost every stage of the game. The matchup as a whole is grindy. Punishes aren't exactly huge unless the Puff lands a rest, so the set often comes down to winning neutral over and over and over again.
My reason for liking it so much is because it gives you so much time to adapt. I didn't start with Brawl, but a lot of my growth as a player happened playing Brawl, and I guess I'm used to these kinds of slow, neutral-based, adaptation-based matchups where you only get a hit here or there, and you really have to adapt better than your opponent does throughout the entire set if you want to win.
I mean, hell, one of the biggest punishes we saw out of lloD was in the first game of the set, which was one lloD narrowly lost, by the way, and it was for a staggering 39%. Most of the time we can see big punishes like these result in entire stocks, but here it's just for a measly 39%. And on top of that, it took lloD another 40 seconds or so to finally take the stock, which included about 1 billion additional neutral interactions. Since the matchup relies so heavily on defense and neutral, playing around shield becomes all the more important. lloD makes great use of late shields to play around Hungrybox's hitboxes, and if there's one word I could use to describe his defense in this set, it's ridiculous.
He's so good.
The funny thing about this supercut of all of lloD's ridiculous power shields is that they don't even really benefit him all that much compared to a normal shield. If anything, they're actually detrimental to what his end goal is, which is typically an out of shield aerial, since you get pushed back further on a power shield than you do a normal shield. And since he is jumping out of shield most of the time, lloD doesn't concern himself as much with the option to power shield into a grounded move like down smash unless he thinks they'll land within his threat range. lloD explains that the rationale behind power shielding isn't necessarily to min-max his damage by enabling grounded options like the power shield down smash, but rather to reduce the amount of time his opponent has to react to the shield.
So the advantage of the power shield, it's not necessarily the power shield that I was going for, it was the fact that I would delay the shield as long as possible. So I think that also contributed to the fact that he didn't go for grab that much.
Yeah, it gives him less information.
Less information, gives me a lot more time to run. And
Sure,
so if he's gonna track where I'm gonna be running by the time I would put up my shield, he has to think like 6 frames extra of movement prediction that he would compared to anyone else.
Players like Armada used to hold shield in this matchup, which can be a bit more limiting when opponents like Hungrybox can react to the shield much further in advance. We've talked about this in a previous episode on HBox, but his ability to weave in ambiguous aerial drift, coupled with empty hop grabs, makes a standing shield a very, very scary option. Preemptively shielding against a waiting opponent will deplete your shield health as well, which gives the Puff player a larger window to shield poke. So a bonus to all of these power shields is lloD is able to avoid damage on his shield a lot throughout this set, since power shielding an attack doesn't reduce shield health. Aside from all the options HBox has at his disposal to play around a shield, a Puff shield poke, especially in this matchup, is completely brutal, and holding shield just gives her more time to find the poke. And aside from the more tangible benefits to lloD's strategy, it was just completely insane how many power shields he was able to get, and that certainly has an impact on your opponent's mental game. Surprisingly, one of the more difficult aspects of this matchup is how Peach handles Jigglypuff's shield. Hitting a Puff and shield is incredibly difficult, and Puff's rolls are so good that punishes are often hard to come by as well. Typically, characters become invulnerable on frame 4 of a roll, which Peach down smash can usually punish if she's plus on shield. However, Puff is the only character in the game whose forward roll is invulnerable on frame 2. This 2-frame difference means many of Peach's float cancel pressure options just won't work as often against a forward roll from Jigglypuff. And remember how I said a shield poke against Peach is brutal in this matchup? Well, autopiloting your shield pressure against Puff can be just as rough, since it can open the Peach player up to a ton of damage if she whiffs. Another aspect of the matchup which may be overlooked at times is lloD's use of turnips to control space. Choosing your spots to pull turnips is already very important in a defense-heavy matchup, but lloD uses a combination of turnips thrown upwards alongside ambiguous throw lengths to create a wall and stifle approaches from HBox.
The fact that you could throw a turnip straight upwards and then completely divide the stage into 2 components from anywhere, I think that makes a big difference when trying to catch Puff's landing, for example.
A turnip thrown upwards is like a knife that cuts the stage into 2 more easily manageable sections, and this is precisely the reason why lloD likes FD so much in this matchup. What goes up, which in this case are turnips, must come down, and there aren't any platforms to block these projectiles from falling back to the ground. Let's check out this first stock of Game 2 as an example. lloD throws 2 turnips up to split the stage into smaller chunks, and that allows him to catch HBox's drift with a double jump up air. lloD uses these moving hitboxes as frame traps to force HBox into making awkward movement decisions, which is already cool, but it gets even better.
Another Peach tech is something called an extended toss. As Peach, you have actually 3 distances you can throw turnips if you're standing on the ground. The first is if you press A, it does a regular throw, and it goes like the medium distance. If you press forward on the C stick or forward in A, like a smash attack, it'll go a long distance. But something weird about Peach is that if you throw a turnip backwards, like if you smash throw a turnip backwards, it goes farther than if you had been facing that direction and thrown forward. And so that extra distance is actually huge against like Puff and Marth, because it forces them just a little bit farther away from you, gives you an extra half second to react to their approaches, and makes it so that they can't punish your turnip pulls as much. So mix up those with the double jump cancel turnip throw. That's Peach turnip control 201, we'll say.
In addition to horizontal throws, by double jump canceling a vertical throw, the projectile actually travels less distance than a regular upwards throw. lloD mixes up the length of his thrown turnips in this way to force specific movement out of the puff player. And the mix-up within the mix-up is that each of these throw lengths represents a different threat range that HBox wants to avoid. Turnip game is so important for the Peach player, especially when you consider special turnips like Stitch Faces, so the ability to vary throw lengths in a way that's not easily recognizable just adds another layer of complexity and mix-ups to the Peach's game plan. The two turnip throws here almost persuade HBox into dodging them in a specific way that lloD can then cover. For only inflicting a few percent per hit, these projectiles work overtime to zone, threaten attack ranges, build percent, and help create KO opportunities. And finding stocks against Puff isn't something that should be overstated. It's super hard, and it often comes down to just getting a stray hit or two. Projectile traps like the previous example help a lot, but lloD is also one of the fastest Peaches when it comes to closing distance by utilizing hyperfloats.
So hyperfloat is an extension of subfloat, or I guess it's a type. The popular way to do subfloats from standing on the ground is to jump and then immediately double jump and then start your float. And the reason that works as a subfloat is because when you double jump, Peach dips a little bit towards the ground and she kind of tucks her feet inside her dress, and that lets you reach a Y coordinate that is lower than she would be if she just did a regular ground float. The way that hyperfloat works is it's the same input as that subfloat where you jump and immediately double jump and then start your float. But the difference is that your jump and your double jump actually have horizontal drift. So you jump forward and then immediately double jump forward and then start your float. That's the main difference, is the hyperfloat allows you to like push yourself forward and cover a lot more distance and reach that maximum float velocity faster. And so that's how I'm able to punish a lot of these aerials, especially to compensate for the pushback on the power shield. I mean, you can do that regardless of which shield you're doing, but that's historically how I've been able to punish a lot more Puff's aerials on my shield.
The other benefit for lloD's playstyle specifically is that these incredibly low floats keep him close to the ground to always have shield or another aerial as a follow-up option.
She's the only one that can, do aerials on the ground that quickly in rapid succession and that are so safe on shield. So
it feels like it complements your playstyle really well, because you said this in your analysis on Twitch too, where it was like the other benefit of doing like the hyperfloat subfloat aerial is that you can literally be grounded again more quickly to do something else.
Exactly. And if they hit you, you're already on the ground anyways. They can't like knock you any further into the ground, and so you're already there. You can ASDI down in deathmatch. You can force attack in a situation that would otherwise force you into the air.
The hyperfloat lets him maintain speed to be that much closer for an out of shield option, and since he already spends a few extra frames moving rather than holding shield, the added pushback from a potential power shield doesn't really affect him all that much. The last stock from Game 2 is a perfect example of option coverage using different floats. HBox is over 100%, and we see lloD try to divide the stage with another pair of turnips into up air. This setup is very similar to how lloD got HBox's first stock, but the turnip throw lengths vary slightly and HBox sneaks out. At this point, lloD is fishing for that stray hit. Since a strong hit up air will certainly kill here, he mixes in subfloats and hyperfloats to close space quickly while threatening the kill option. And because any of these hits have the potential to kill, HBox tries to play around it. But here's exactly where the benefit of becoming grounded more quickly becomes completely apparent. Since lloD is able to quickly land after throwing out the up air hitbox, he can follow the landing with an immediate rising neutral air, which catches HBox drifting in after lloD's initial whiff. The first up air would scout for a short hop back air, and lloD's full hop nair can connect before HBox even has a chance to throw out a second aerial. Again, this was only a single hit to take the stock, but the level of conditioning and microspacing needed to close out the game was more than impressive. lloD's immense patience coupled with his ability to adapt in long, drawn-out sets like these really do let his unique playstyle shine. He's not the highest ranked Peach at the moment, but I think he has something special figured out when it comes to Hungrybox, and I'm really interested in seeing if the matchup begins to develop even more after such a historic win. So many people see a Peach Puff set and think they're in for a snooze fest, but in all honesty I couldn't help but feel totally invested in the outcome of this match. The subtle back and forth combined with adjustments constantly being made over the course of a set like this, it was so interesting to watch. lloD is just freakishly good at this matchup, and he deserves much more praise for proving some of the best players in the world wrong. Whether you want to call it history made, an online fluke, HBox choking, or lloD playing out of his mind, one thing is certain. Once lloD finishes med school, we'll be calling him lloD MD. But it won't be for Doctor of Medicine. It'll be for Doctor of Melee. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and hopefully you were able to catch the LACS 2. Of course, big props need to be given to Ludwig and his team for putting on such an awesome event, and link to the stream will be in the description. If you'd like to help support the channel, the best way to do so is through Patreon. You might have noticed some snippets of an interview I conducted with lloD throughout the video. The full uncut version is available as bonus content for our patrons, and you can get some other cool stuff by joining too. There was honestly so much Peach information lloD dropped on me during our interview that I wasn't able to fit into this video, so if you want to hear from a much more intelligent player than me, I'd definitely consider joining our Patreon community. Speaking of which, I'd like to give a very special thanks to our Tier 5 patrons for this month, Avishwa Stein and Brian Malumphy. The Patreon has been doing super well recently, and it's great to be able to workshop video ideas with some of you guys, so thanks for all the support. As always, we have a lot of cool content on the way for you guys, so if you want to hear more updates on any of it, please be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and consider supporting on Patreon if you want to join all these names in the credits. Until then, I'm turndownforwalt. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Hi everyone, this is lloD. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you learned a couple things about the Peach Puff matchup. Feel free to follow me on Twitter or Twitch, but most importantly, make sure you read my guide to improvement, because chances are you're really lazy. Okay, thanks.
Jesus. Yeah, that's great.